Welcome to the third of our Elements of Style sessions. Thank you for persevering with me on this. Again, we're talking about Strunk and White's The Elements of Style. But we're going to get down to some real nitty-gritty. We first talked about the elementary rules of usage and composition of composing. Now we're going to talk about form. And in session 4, we're going to talk about commonly misused words and then wrap the whole thing up. So let's talk about a few matters of form. Just because you understand the abbreviation doesn't mean your reader does. And APA says you should always expand and explain abbreviations. I'm going to throw some out. I see a lot. VA. You work for the Veterans Administration. You know what that means. I live in Virginia. I know what that means. It can cause some confusion. Now, maybe in context, someone can figure it out, but APA says, you need to expand that. NP. What does that stand for? Nurse practitioner? New police officer? Could be anything. ED. Does that stand for education department? Does it stand for a doctorate of education? Does it stand for an emergency department? Does it stand for erectile dysfunction? I mean, there are so many things that can be misinterpreted. So even though it's part of your vernacular and you feel like in context they should know this, you need to expand any abbreviation. There are other forms of slang that I see a lot. As per. It just seems to be in American lingo, as per this. Well, I can tell you the APA style manual is very specific. According to is correct grammar. According to Strunk and White. Okay, not as per. And via actually is slang. You should be using through. So the survey was conducted through emails, not via emails. An exception is sometimes there's legal verbiage like Roe v. Wade. We all know that that stands for versus, and it is an abbreviation that is used in legal work. So you would use that because that is part of the way that that is structured. Exclamations rarely are used in scholarly writing. So don't make every simple statement into an exclamation. I really like this course is a statement. It's not I really like this course. Okay. But there are some that are always explanations because they actually are not sentences. That would be Happy New Year, Happy Birthday, etc. They're not sentences. They are in themselves exclamations. So let's talk about headers and headings. Headers go at the top of the page in the upper left corner. For student work, omit headers. Okay, here's the logic for that. Student work is usually submitted as a PDF, as it is in Aspen. So it's really all together. So it can't be separated into lots of little pages. So we don't really need a header to make sure that we know that, oh, it's that one. But when you submit to a journal, you add the header because they might print it and then it gets separated from your name, your title page, so that when it's peer reviewed, I don't know that I'm reviewing my best friend's work, that kind of thing. So because that might be separated, then they don't have they have the headers on each page because they might be pulling information out so the peer reviewers don't see certain pertinent information. So for student work at Aspen, no header at the top left corner. But to submit to a journal, you would add a header. So otherwise, just use APA format for headings. Headings are different. You do have headings. They're what organizes your work. You never have the heading introduction. It is presumed in APA style. And then after that, you would organize your thoughts into level headings. And of course, you would have a conclusion level heading and a reference level heading. So hyphens, this is something I see a lot. There's a little quirk in APA style about hyphens. When two or more words are combined to form one word, then you hyphenate them. Evidence is a word and based is a word. So you hyphenate those. But when it's prefixes, words that don't necessarily stand on their word, they're better off not hyphenated. And especially prefixes like post, pre, non, and co, which are used a lot when we are talking about scholarly writing. Those are prefixes. And so if you go to this particular part of the APA style, it has a nice list of those that you don't hyphenate. And don't hyphenate a word when it's better off not hyphenated, like bedside is not hyphenated. So let's talk about margins. The margins for APA style are fixed at 1 inch on all sides, indent all paragraphs except for the abstract, and indent second and subsequent lines in the references. It makes the references set apart because obviously the only one that's going to touch the left side will be the beginning of each of the references. It makes it a whole lot easier to read. So as far as numerals are concerned, dates, as I mentioned previously, you're going to not say August 27th, okay? But then we say that out loud. We don't write that. We write August 27, 1994. So let's talk about parentheses. When you use parentheses for a citation, for example, Glidewell and Bolgiano, 2025, punctuation goes outside of the citation afterwards, not before, because that disjointed the citation from what it's referring to. So you would have whatever Glidewell and Bolgiano said, then you'd have the citation, then you'd have the punctuation. When it comes to the references, you'll notice here punctuation. There's a comma after the author's last name, a period after the author's initials, a period after the dates. There is nothing between the title of the book and the editions. There is a period after ed period because it is it's actually an abbreviation for edition. There's a period after the whole title at that point, and there's a period after the publisher. The students finished the paper after much time. That's a parenthetical expression, comma, and she went to the party. So let's talk about quotations. First of all, please don't overquote. Your instructor wants to see what you learned. They don't want to reread the textbook. They've already read the textbook. They don't need to reread the textbook. So it really is better if you just read the textbook or whatever you're reading and you summarize it to show what you got out of it, how it informed your ideas or maybe supports your ideas. So really, you almost never need to do quotations. But you feel like this author says it better than anybody in the world could ever say it, formal quotations cited as evidence are introduced with a colon and then quotation marks. So if the dean made these remarks at graduation, go out into the world and do great things, being sure to mention this university when you do so, you're going to have colon, open quotations, the entire quotation, and then closed quotations. If used in apposition or as the direct object of a verb, a comma is used instead. I'm often reminded of what my preceptor told me and then what it was. So I'm often reminded of what my preceptor told me stands on its own. I'm reminded of what it is. So now I'm telling you a little bit more information. This is what my preceptor told me. You'll notice in the first instance with the dean remarked, okay, that doesn't stand on its own. The dean remarked at graduation does not stand on its own. So it needs a colon and then the quote. The other one is an apposition or the direct object. I'm reminded of what was said. This is what was said. So it uses a comma. If you're quoting a large number of words, which I hope you're not, indent them, don't use quotation marks, and remember to cite them. When you cite a direct quotation in APA style, you need to put the paragraph or page number. Now, why don't you do that for all citations? Because you're talking about generally what Smith and Jones said in their book. It's all over their book, right? So you don't have an exact page number. But when you are talking about an exact quote, you have to say exactly where it was. so your reader can double check that it's there. So for references, a great resource for APA style referencing is found at this link. You take a photo of this or somehow capture this. That is so good because it breaks it down by, is this a website? Is this a journal? Is this a book? Is this a YouTube? And it tells you exactly how to do every different kind of reference in APA style. So, syllabication. I don't know what I did. So let me go back one and see if I can fix it. There we go. Okay, syllabication. If you need to break a word into syllables, such as the end of the line, or especially on PowerPoint slides, you can go to an online dictionary, and this is where it's found, and it'll tell you this is how you break it into syllables. Otherwise, people look at it, they get fixated, they're looking at that on the slide instead of listening to you. If you need to break a word into syllables and it doesn't look good on a slide, though, you can actually sort of pull it. If you hover over it, you'll see little dots in the box, and you can stretch it or stretch it, and sometimes that will fix it on a slide. So let's look at titles. In the body and on the title page, I want you to capitalize the first letters of all words over 3 letters. So and the, maybe not. Because when printing presses were used, they would have these big pieces of wood blocked off. They'd put little typesetting in. They would slosh a bunch of ink over it. They'd put a piece of paper and then they'd crush it. And that is how they actually made pages. So at the start of the book, they had plenty of capital letters for titles. And they had capital letters for the beginning of sentences, for proper nouns like United States and Canada, you know, or even for proper adjectives like Canadian or American, you know. But by the time they got to references, they ran out of these capital letters. And so in references, they have a different set of rules. They use sentence capitalization rules for titles of books, electronic media, and journal articles. So then you would only capitalize the first letter of first words, proper nouns and adjectives, and all letters in an abbreviation. Again, sentence capitalization rules are what are used in references, because by the time they got to references, they ran out of capital letters. That's the reason. I know it's silly in these days and times, but it's APA style. So final takeaways. Yeah, you can do it. My grandson bought this to me to try to help me be more healthy. Wasn't that clever of him? So writing will strengthen your writing skills. Best way to do anything is just do it, right? And you'll get better at it. While you might have learned certain rules in English 101, at this level, you need to follow the APA style guide as well as those English rules. Get to know that website. That I have that bookmarked. I go to it a lot. If you need to even look up a word or do syllabication spelling, use dictionary.com. It's free. Use it. Pay attention to the feedback your instructors give. They want you to write better. And like learning any language, fluency is going to come by trial, error, and correction. It's how all of us learn. So please reach out if I can help you in absolutely any way. I want you to be successful. And remember, this is the book on which we based these sessions.